Welcome to The Brag Effect, where we share easy-to-understand customer service tips from business owners and leaders that will help you get your customers bragging about you in all the right ways. Hi, I'm Mike Wells, and together with my co-host Michelle Adams. Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Mike.
A big thanks for joining us.
Tom Scantlebury has been an experienced enthusiast since a very early age. From chasing waves, snow, music, and great food around the world to managing five-star hotels, he has been dedicated to creating and savouring memorable experiences. Since pivoting from hotel management to experience management, Tom has helped ASX-listed companies design, measure, and improve the quality of experiences that they provide their customers and employees with. He is a passionate believer that a differentiated, emotionally engaging customer experience, regardless of the industry, delivers profitable and meaningful business outcomes. Tom founded Sky Blue CX Services 5 years ago, where he leads his clients through a three-step process of designing, embedding, and then measuring experiences. He says that experiences define how we feel, and our feelings define our behaviour. So in a business sense, uncovering and improving the way that people feel when they interact with you creates a better business. Welcome, Tom. So good to have you on the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
So, experience in terms of a business and teams has changed so much over the years, right? So, back in the day, there was, a customer service team or officer, and now we're seeing companies have, head of customer experience, and businesses are realising the importance of that compared to, say, what we used to 10 years ago. So, over your career, can you share with us kind of how you've seen that shape?
Yeah. Well, there's a kind of CXO. There's a new kind of title thrown around. It seems like they're creating new kind of experience titles all over the place. But what that underpins is that the prevalence and importance of experience management has actually it's recognised. It works. But my humble beginnings as a hotelier, started as working in concierge. So from my perspective, the customer, the lens of hospitality was the perfect kind of breeding ground for customer experience kind of methodology. It was just in the DNA. Everybody knows when you work in a hotel that you're there for one purpose, and it's to serve and delight the customer. So that's not new to anyone who works in hospitality. But it is new in all these other kind of industries, right? So that's what we've kind of seen, these kind of chief customer officers in financial services or automotive or retail, that's new. Or when we say new, newish. So I think what really drove that change was the digital age. So 2010, the smart device came along, and what we kind of say is that all of a sudden, the customer had a megaphone and super hearing. So that meant that you could no longer get away with providing poor experiences because you're going to get found out real quick. So, excuse me. So that really was kind of what accelerated the shift for businesses to be more customer-centered. And I think that what happened is, I like to use Apple as an example. So have you ever been to an Apple store?
Yes.
Okay. It's different
yes.
to, let's say, a Dick Smith's.
Yes.
Okay. So a normal tech store is going to have a lot of tech and a lot of tech people. And Apple had this plan to become a retail seller. So obviously they've got their amazing products, so they wanted to sell them in an amazing way. So what's interesting in what Apple did was that they looked to hotels. So they said, we don't want to create a retail experience, we want to create a kind of hospitality experience. So, they're an amazing, obviously innovative tech company. So they wanted to innovate and design their retail experience. So the first thing they did, like I said, is that they looked to hotels and thought, how can we make this more of a kind of a service centered experience? So they played around with it, but one of the things they did was that they created a concierge. So as you walk into a store, you get greeted. Mm-hmm. And just like you walk into a hotel, you get greeted. Mm-hmm. If you walk into a restaurant, you get greeted. And they measured NPS. We'll talk about that maybe in another episode, but they basically measured satisfaction. And they knew if they had their concierge, they had a 30-point NPS improvement on if they didn't have one. So
it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And then they train them to do, cool things like to connect, personalise, use people's names, and then understand, all right, you're not a tech person. Let's take the tech out of it. What are you looking for? Oh, I'm just looking for a phone. Great. They use your name. They introduce you to somebody. There's no desks in there. You sit around a table. The whole thing feels different. And, it's designed incredibly well. And they are the most successful per square foot retailer in the world for a reason, because they've put customer experience at the forefront. So that's why you've got these new titles, because it works, right?
Yeah. So they do that, so often we hear Apple referred to as a case study. Mm-hmm. But, for someone listening or watching, they might be thinking, well, when at Apple, how in a smaller business, as an example, can you still use that as an opportunity to learn and implement into your business, for a smaller organisation?
Well, I think using that example, they stood back and had a look at the experiences that their customers were having. The challenge for anyone in business is that we have this lens that we kind of look at our business through our eyes as business operators. We look at our department, we know our costs, our operational issues, our process issues, supply issues. We're issue managers. we fix all this stuff. We turn up, we've got our emails, we've got our, staffing issues, and, that's our life.
Yeah.
So what's hard is to just switch that off, take a 180 and have your customer's lens on. And so that's why hospitality was always, I think, such a great breeding ground for great service that is now kind of like overflowing into all sorts of different sectors. Because the first thing you do when you work in a hotel, like if you're the duty manager, is you do a property walk and you have a look, what am I seeing, not from back of house, but front of house. So what is my customer seeing? Okay, walk up through the arrival area, before the restaurant opens, you do a walk through. Is everything set? Is everything vacuumed? Is it ready to go? We're on show, always on show. So for any business owner, I think it's just a kind of a constant reminder to switch that lens around to your customer's lens.
Yes.
Okay.
And staff, team too, right? It's like that show, that Undercover Boss. I loved watching that show.
Yeah. What was that other show? The one, there was Restaurant Nightmares or something?
Yeah.
That is fake, right? It is. They've got cameras.
I hope it's fake.
And they're like, see, that guy's stealing money and then we're going to go and get them. Yeah, but...
we both come from hospitality backgrounds, so we get it. But I remember one of my corporate roles for a franchise group here in Queensland. It was Serapis, a coffee franchise. And my role was retail development manager. And, most people in that, it was quite a new role, but most people, that had been in that head of marketing role had just come in first day, sat at the desk, and that's kind of where they stayed. We did this role a little bit different, and the first 6 weeks of my role started in store. And I literally was on the coffee machine. I learned as if I was a new team member. I was talking to customers. I was passing coffee out the window. It's a drive-through. And it just gave me such good insight of the business that I just would have never have got just sitting at a desk. So that's such a good point of having that different lens of perspective what's the customer seeing, what's the customer feeling at every point is so important. And we just don't do that as business owners often enough because we're so busy, like you said, like whack-a-mole, dealing with all of the issues in our business. So that's gold.
Hey, just on that point, I love that because I think that there's some research done by Bain. This is a couple of years old, but it still rings true. And that's that 80% of executives, when asked if they provide great service, 80% will say, yes, we do. And when you ask those same businesses' customers if they provide great experiences, 8%. 8% actually agree with them. So that's a gap between kind of, executive perception and reality. And so we call that the experience gap. So when you think about what you're talking about there, you spent time on the floor. And as we get busier, we get distance from the operation. And the bigger the business, the bigger the distance. And that distance creates disconnection. You're out of touch with the day-to-day. You're out of touch with what your frontline are doing. You're out of touch with what your customers are experiencing. So customer experience actually fills that gap or illuminates that gap. So it doesn't matter where you sit, with a good experience management program in place, you can see in real time what's happening. And you can focus on making sure that the front line are doing all of the right things. So back to your original question, why has experience management kind of become more important? It's because of this gap that just you can't sustain. If you think you're great, but you're actually not, then hello, your kind of businesses is... Yeah. And here's the thing is like what we find now in the digital age is that poor performing businesses are disproportionately punished. So the laggards in customer experience, the ones that provide poorer service, their returns are like way lower than those that are exceptional. So the exceptional are, a multiple of like 3 to 4 above these laggards, and they're kind of on every kind of, success measurement, returns and revenue and profitability. You do the right thing by your customers. If you exceed the market, then you exponentially exceed in your returns.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. And, working with sales organisations over the years, it's, you can see the impact of trying to let go of that sales culture and changing to a more customer-centric culture is really challenging. But this is where reviews play such an important part in business now because, like you said, the client now has a megaphone. If that impacts sales. If the customer experience isn't right, it impacts sales. So you have to look at that now.
Yeah. You're in a way, customer experience is the new marketing, is the new sales, because the better you treat your customers, they become your sales force. They become your marketers.
Promoters. Yeah.
And reviews is an easy place for them to share how they feel, good and bad. And reviews is the place where when people are selecting, they will have a look before they decide. So
and they're brutally honest. Yeah.
People believe reviews over anything that you can say about your business. They'll believe what someone else says about your business.
Yeah. I mean, we say that, no one believes now what you write on your website. It's social proof.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something like 92% of people now, consumers, are reading reviews before they make a buying decision.
Yep. And not going away.
We need to catch up. Businesses have to catch up because, so often we talk to businesses and they go, yeah, we've got a great Google rating, but they have no idea about, what their staff said on Seek or Indeed.
Yeah.
They've never Googled their business. So your brand reputation is everything. So, yes, it's important about how your customers make you feel, but now you've actually got tangible results to show that social proof makes a difference to your bottom line.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, I keep coming back to like, why are we seeing businesses with chief experience officers? Well, guess what? It actually drives profitability, revenue. It even reduces costs as well. But in about the year 2000, a paper came out of Harvard that was written around the economics of advocacy. And that's where this kind of NPS movement started. It was like, how do you, basically, businesses that have greater advocacy outperform those that don't. It's a bit of a no-brainer. But intuitively, we kind of know that, but it's all feeling related. So it's kind of intangible. And that's kind of why it's taken a while to get this traction, that feelings drive behaviour. So how you make a customer feel will drive whether they return, talk about you or not. So it's a process. It's not just like, okay, we'll put surveys into place and away we go. When you've got that lens, the customer lens, how are they feeling? How do we make them feel? And if you start there, then you have a chief customer officer, you have this kind of culture from the top down, you have some design process in place, you have measurement processes in place. And I know we'll talk about this in another episode, but how are your employees feeling? How are your customers feeling? How do you even know if you're not asking?
And listening.
And doing something about it. So it is all about feelings. And feelings are pretty hard to pin down. They're not numbers on a sheet that you can tell exactly what's going on.
Let's dive into that. I mean, one of the quotes I think we've got on our poster is, people don't remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So it's almost a bit woo-woo. In a business context, it's everything, isn't it? Well, in any sense, it's everything. Yeah. But I love that we're having this conversation, because we know that feelings, basically how we feel, then either it creates behaviour. Mm-hmm. So if I had a really good experience and I was valued, I want to come back. And it doesn't matter if you can get a product that's cheaper, that creates loyalty. So it's almost the foundation.
So the part of the brain that actually, experiences feelings has no kind of relationship for time. So once a business has made you feel bad, it stays there for a long time. Or they've made you feel really good and welcome, those emotions are kind of always anchored on that brand or that business. So we say in any customer experience is made up of three things. So there's customer success. So did I get what I wanted? Customer effort. How hard was it? The harder it is, the more friction, the worse the experience. But ultimately what trumps everything is the emotion that I experienced through that interaction. So the emotion kind of overrides everything. And generally emotion is created by the interaction with a human. People kind of generate emotion. Sometimes you could be on hold for half an hour and that creates a lot of emotion, but generally it's the person that you speak to that will create emotion. So tell me about a good or a bad experience you've had lately.
Well, it's both in the same story,
okay.
Actually.
Yeah.
Recently, we needed a sign. This sign created us in the backdrop.
Yes.
Just of our Bragg logo. Perspex, pretty simple. We wanted it within sort of 36 hours because we wanted to start filming on this Monday. So Mike started researching different sign companies. One that seemed quite reputable, had some good reviews, great reviews. Picked up the phone, said, this is what I need, pretty simple. Is there any chance I can have it within sort of 36 hours? Yeah, not going to happen, mate. Mike's like, okay, clunk. And tried somebody else, some great reviews, and the guy was like, you know what, I can make it happen. Send me through the logo file and I'll come back to you. And every point, within that, he actually had it back within sort of 48 hours. no, 24 hours. I think it was like literally the next day. But he was messaging us the whole way, like, you know, just making sure this is the right, you know, colour tone for the star in the middle of the A. And,
Awesome.
you know, this is what I'm thinking. And he was just really communicative. And then said, you know, I'm aiming to have it ready for sort of, you know, midday tomorrow. Just let me know what time you would like to come and pick it up. He was just fantastic to deal with. So we actually took him a bottle of wine and told him about the first experience and just said, you know, well done, thanks very much. We'll give you a great review. And, yeah, Mike took a photo and sent it to the first guy and said, well, it did happen, mate. So there's a combination of both, good and bad. Mm.
That is such a great example. It's real, right? There's a sign. But let's just walk through. There's the good experience and the bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the bad experience, we'll start with that one. So, okay, customer success. You just wanted a sign. I'm sure you knew roughly what you wanted, but you needed it quickly. So the first guys, obviously, that didn't happen. Effort, you know, well, you didn't get the option. However, think about the emotion. Not like the response could have come in many different ways.
And you know what? That's a good point, because if he had have said to Mike, really sorry, mate, love to accommodate you, but unfortunately I'm just super busy right now. Got it. No worries at all. But not going to happen, mate, was patronising.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's feeling. Like
Yes.
it's pretty quickly. Hang on. You're the customer. You want to give some money to a business and they're like, ha, you're dreaming.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And I get it. At the moment, some businesses are just overwhelmed. You know, they can't deliver the work that people want of them. You know, COVID's made things pretty crazy for some businesses. But the thing is, down the track, it's not always going to be like that. That business is going to need work. And guess what? Not going to happen, mate, means that you're not ever going to go back there, mate.
And look, might have got him on a bad day, and, you know, Mike actually gave him a negative review, and, you know, he rang up and said, why did you give me a bad review? And Mike's like, well, you're actually open to hearing the feedback. I'd love to share it with you. And so Mike gave him the blow-by-blow feedback and how he felt. Still didn't end all that well, but that's a perfect example.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm sure that's not a very big business, but the bigger the business, the more not going to happen, mate, touch points can appear along that kind of interaction. So this is where your front line is your business. Every time a customer interacts with your brand, they are either left with an improved impression, a diminished impression, or a neutral impression. So every single touch point. So it could be, you know, any kind of like a drive-through coffee store. The person there is the brand and they're like, oh, can I get my double shot latte? Not going to happen, mate. Coffee machine's broken. Okay, well, I hate you guys forever. Now, let's go to the second experience, so the positive one. So put it through that lens, customer success. You needed your sign within 3 days. Tick. Effort. There was, you know, minimal effort. There was no friction, so that didn't come into it. And then tell me about the emotional component. So what you said was they were in touch with you and they were keeping you posted. So that...
Well, I felt, you know, confident. I had confidence in the delivery. I wasn't left questioning, are we going to meet this deadline? I was confident we would, because he was in touch.
There was trust.
Yes.
Yes. There was no anxiety. It's important to you. You needed it. And then they probably exceeded expectations, maybe in the time or the level of communication. A signed business, you wouldn't expect to be really proficient in professional communication, or maybe you do, but obviously their competitors aren't. So very different emotional outcomes. And guess what? One of those two businesses got your business. Not only... because this is where customer experience plays out, right? Not only did the other business not get your business, but they got a negative review. So what that means is when the next person is Googling where you're going to go, quickly have a look at reviews, they're going to go for the one that had the poor service, bad review, or the great service, good review. So,
100%.
That's how it works.
So I understand very much that how you make customers feel is important. What are the steps that you follow when you're working with clients you talk about that 3-part process?
Yeah.
How do you teach them about these things, about the feelings matter?
Yeah. Well, the first part for me is that we get a connection with a potential client. So they care. They might say, hey, we're not perfect. We want to improve. So when we have somebody who says, can you just run surveys, and then they're not going to do anything with them, it's not really going to work. Similar to at the beginning, you said that there's a lot of businesses that have customer experience teams, customer experience executives. Now that there's 20 years essentially of kind of, history on how to kind of develop a customer experience program, there is a methodology that's applied. It's a bit like accounting practices, right? So it's important to count the money. And so there are standards that are built around kind of the chartered accountants, and there's consistency in how that's done. So in customer experience, we want to measure and improve experiences. So there are now essentially kind of certifications and best practice processes that you can go through, and customer experience professionals association. So it's not just a sky blue approach. But we help businesses that don't have the capability of having it in-house. So there's kind of like 3 steps. The first is around designing. So let's look at what we do and design a better way to create more positive emotions with our customers. I think we'll cover that in a bit more detail.
Journey mapping.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we can, we'll do another episode, I think, what journey mapping looks like, but deliberately think about how your interactions, your key interactions look like between your customers. So we started talking about Apple. They've designed that experience with a high predictability of positive emotions. So that's the kind of design piece. Let's break down and have a look at your most important interactions. For the sign guys, if they were to reach out to us, we'd go, all right, well, let's have a look at your inquiry process and what you do if you can't deliver on time. So anyway, so there's the design piece. The second is like, okay, we want to enable the team to go and deliver that. So you do need to kind of get your team moving in that same direction. So you do that through some, smartly designed training that is going to change their behaviors, because they just do what they've done. So it's like, okay, we're going to start shifting to a more, and the great thing, I think Apple is a good example of it, is it's not about scripts. It's not about saying, okay, when you meet someone, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's about kind of enablement and empowerment and understanding that your job is to build a positive connection with a customer. And so, there's work in that space about getting your whole team focusing on what we know is right, on personalizing, on greeting, on building connection, on whatever it kind of is. So design it right first, train the team to go and do it, and then you get into the measurement piece. And again, we'll talk in another episode about, how do you measure experiences, surveys, all that kind of thing. So it's about measuring what's important, and we call it X data. Okay, so businesses are, big data. You heard that term? There's data, there's numbers and stuff coming in everywhere, right? So we're overwhelmed with data, Google Analytics, and it's unbelievable the amount of data that we can get. Now, most of that data, and particularly in business, is what we call operational. It's your P&L, your turnover, your, all that stuff that's happened, your payroll. It's like, this is what's happened in the business. Is it good? Is it bad? We look at that all the time. They're the instruments that we use to make decisions. Now, experience data, capturing how people feel, is what we call X data. And that is predictive. So if you start to see that your sentiment, whatever you're measuring in the feeling realm, your customers are starting to be less happy with you, then guess what? Your revenue and your profitability, all that stuff's going to be coming down. So one's rear view mirror stuff. The X data is forward looking. And with those two instruments, you're much better equipped to manage your business with the whole view. Because what I like to think is like that measurement piece, you've got that measurement piece, it's like turning the lights on to all the cracks. You can see everything, not just what you think you know. It's so they're the 3 steps: design, train, then measure. And then you kind of keep the journey going from there. And what I was just going to say is that's what customer experience teams do in a business, is that they'll have a measurement team. They'll have a design team, so they'll work with, different parts of the business that are looking at implementing a new process. Okay, get the CX design team involved, and they'll use the customer lens to help them come up with a new process, which is really, really well created to hone in on those positive emotions. Remember that lens is like business lens? No, they'll come in and have the customer lens. Get it right. They'll do the measurement stuff, and a lot of the time it's about using that experience data in really predictive ways. So, they'll have very comprehensive listening systems and analytics teams that will then kind of like present, right, we should be doing this. We're starting to see a dip in this product over here. We should be doing that. They're the eyes and the feeling eyes and ears.
And I think the important thing too is that there'd be probably a lot of companies that would be saying, we already do that. We talk to our customers, we ask them if they're happy with the service or whatever it might be. But one thing I remember you mentioning to me recently was that people are more honest with somebody else than maybe what they would be with you as the business yourself.
Yeah.
So having somebody else survey your customers or ask these questions is really important.
Yeah, that's right. And particularly when it comes to employees as well, if you do an employee, which again, that's a big component, is like measuring how your employees are feeling about you, because that then plays out on how they interact with your customers. So yeah, when we have a third party kind of come and anonymously take feedback, then people are much more willing to share, that's for sure. And people, you might ask directly from a business to a customer. But the thing is, I guess it's how you ask and when you ask. And that's what we do, is we really kind of specialise in designing that kind of listening piece to be as impactful as possible. People say, we do our surveys. Okay, great. But they may not be very well designed, therefore not that valuable, and you don't really learn as much as you could.
And the uptake might not be as high as what it could be.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. There's kind of nuances on how you ask, when you ask, when you remind.
Let's touch on that in the next episode.
That's right. Let's not
so many things
dive in there
about.
just now.
Thank you so much, Tom. I've loved everything that you've shared and your insights. I think one of the things, big takeaways for me is this applies to any business, right? Like, it's not just a corporate enterprise, that it's every business has touch points that can impact a customer's feeling and how they're left.
Yeah. I mean, intuitively, everyone in business kind of gets it, but it's this, generic, it's like, what do we do with it? And so having more kind of structure and discipline around it really helps them succeed. But yeah, I think a definition of a business I heard is like to improve the life of your customer. And quite often that just gets forgotten in all the busyness and stress and everything that we've got. So customer experience really helps us kind of get back to the basics, like having that simplistic focus. I improve my customer's focus, they're going to come back, we're going to succeed. So I love that it's a lens that just creates purposeful work. And hey, it's an exciting space to work in.
And taking time to stop and actually look at it from a customer's perspective instead of your own. It's really powerful. Thanks, Tom. This has been a great episode. Great to have you on the show.
Awesome. Great to be here.
The Brag Effect is brought to you by Brag Reviews, the review management software that helps businesses improve their reputations, one review at a time. Check it out at bragreviews.com.